Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the regular meeting of November 15th, 2022. I would like to make an amendment to the agenda. We're going to move number 10, which is oath of appointment for Colin O'Hara, to number 4.
I'll make a motion to adopt the agenda as amended.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councilor Hanshaw, and thank you, Councilor Slager. All in favor? Carried. All right. Can I have a motion to adopt the draft minutes from the committee of the whole meeting of November 1st, 2022?
Make a motion to adopt those draft minutes.
I'll second that.
You, Councilor Slager and Councilor Hanshaw. Any questions or comments?
Not for me. Sorry.
All in favor? Carried. Motion to pay the tabled open payables in the amount of $406,230.52.
Make a motion to pay the open payables of $106,230.52.
One second.
I have a question. What makes these tabled? Because we passed a different set at the last meeting. Okay,
They shouldn't have been tabled.
it says tabled.
Yeah, it was tabled on there.
Oh, okay. I was
My
just-
apologies. It wasn't tabled payables.
Okay, and then similarly to last time, I guess, just for the record, can we say what those large capital purchases are on there? Just because it's quite a bit.
Sure.
Basically, I guess anything over 25,000.
CAO Lockwood, you take that?
Sure, your worship. So there's the purchase of the two pickup trucks from White Horse Motors from your capital budget. Just bear with me as I scroll through. Then there's the second progress payment on Superior Roofing, the rec center for $118,000. And then there's a payment to HVAC Tech Systems for $39,169.99, and that is for the heating upgrades at the Northern Light Center and the Rec Center to try and get our heating system back on track. And I think that is all of them.
Awesome, thank you.
Any other questions? Not for me. All in favor?
Hi.
Carried. All right, next is number 4. So we have a new fire chief in town, Mr. Colin O'Hara. Welcome.
Thank you.
Happy to have you. It was a bit of a delayed arrival, I know, and we're glad that you made it. Yeah, I understand you had a meet and greet with the fire department, which was good and hopefully well received.
Yeah, it was, from my end, it was nothing but positive last night, meeting the guys that showed up and got some work to do there in regard to getting settled over in the new hall, but the door's always open for them, coffee's on, and we take advantage of that and get to know them each individually before we have to meet calls. So
Yeah,
have to figure it out as, you know, under the pressure.
yeah, for sure. Awesome. Well, if you want to just stand up and go ahead and you can read the Tiffany's going to do a little.
I got it.
You got it?
All right. I, Colin O'Hara of the town of Watson Lake in the Yukon Territory, do solemnly promise and declare that I will well and truly serve His Majesty King Charles as a designated municipal officer in the position of fire chief for the town of Watson Lake without favor or affection, malice or ill will. That I will honor and respect the mission, goals, purpose, and policies of the town of Watson Lake, and that I continue to hold the said position of fire chief. I will, to the best of my skills and knowledge, discharge all the duties and responsibilities therefore of faithfully and according to law.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, guys.
Very happy to have you.
Happy to be here.
We also found out that you used to play hockey. So we expect to see you on the ice.
I heard such a rumor. I came up really light, I'll be honest. I chose a snow shovel over a hockey stick, so I will have stuff sent up and join you guys as soon as possible.
Oh, that's great. Great.
Perfect.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Okay. Excellent. Nice to have that position filled for the intern. Gonna be great. So next on the agenda, we have Dr. Mary Vandercup, Yukon Chief Veterinary Officer on the Animal Protection Act. Hi, Mary.
Hi, I'll try and keep my video on. Sometimes my internet connection is not that stable, so if it chatters a bit, I'll maybe shut the video off. I'd like to also just mention that I have with me for incredible support, Sam Cottrell, who is our policy analyst, and the policy folks are the ones who interface with the people who from Justice actually end up drafting legislation. So Sam is responsible for keeping us on track with respect to the policies that we're undertaking. I guess I'm not sure how familiar folks are with the text of the actual legislation in the new Animal Protection and Control Act, or how much detail you are interested in having me go into in terms of briefing on this. I'll maybe start by saying that there was an extensive engagement process, but we do recognize that governments change and folks in charge change. And so while that did take place, the act itself is overarching and is intended to set a framework that reflects the general principles that we got from that engagement. The actual detail of how it will be enforced and how it will be put in place really comes down to the regulations, and that's the next stage of development, is fleshing out those regulations. The process did start in 2015 with the death of a young man in Ross River, and the coroner's report in 2016 that authorized us essentially to go ahead and address the Dog Act, which was very much out of date. Our first step in that, and that What We Heard document that we published, was based on an effort to get a sense of the values of Yukoners and the issues that were of concern. We really knew about dog issues because we hear about them all the time. But what came out of that was a need to address things like updating the welfare requirements for animals, dealing with feral livestock that might become a problem. The Eurasian boar were kind of the species that was of most concern. Dealing with exotic wildlife as pets and what should and shouldn't be allowed, and improving the scope of the enforcement tools that were available, especially to communities. We would get a lot of concerns raised around loose dogs. And the bottom line was we have one animal protection officer responsible for the Dog Act in the territory. And for the most part, other than jurisdictions like your own that have bylaws, what we had to respond in these instances was there's nothing that makes it illegal to have dogs running at large in most of Yukon. And so we set about fixing the foundation for those issues in this new piece of legislation. As I say, I'm not there to actually distribute copies or to be able to work through it with you on a sort of clause by clause basis. But the key things that it provides for are the appointment of multiple officers that would be responsible at the territorial level for ensuring that this legislation is enforced. The powers that are delegated to those individuals at either a full officer level, which is a peace officer, or at the deputy level, which is not. And the deputy level would be capable of doing things like inspections and ticketing, but not pursuing warrants. So there's a division of power that's provided for within the legislation. It also provides for a permitting process for businesses that deal with animals. So pet stores that sell animals, rescues, boarding kennels, right? The public generally assumed that government was inspecting all of the boarding facilities and ensuring that they provided adequate care and containment for animals that were being boarded by those businesses. So that permitting process for businesses is one new aspect to this legislation. Another is the designation of species according to whether they are those that would be prohibited for private ownership in the territory. We're talking about predominantly large carnivores and venomous reptiles, very large reptiles, things that represent a threat to public safety. So one schedule of those prohibited species, another schedule of species that would require a permit for people to own. These are things like people move to the territory and they want to bring their pet skunk that they got in Ontario. And it was legal to have there, but currently would not fit well into our regulatory structure. So we want to make allowances for species like that. So we can say you have a permit to own it, it must be neutered, it must be vaccinated against rabies, and we can address the concerns about that animal, that it will not proliferate in the Yukon and cause problems. And the other list is those species that are allowed for general ownership. The current Wildlife Act categorizes anything that's wild by nature as wildlife, and technically that requires a permit for ownership. So things like canaries and budgies and lovebirds and gerbils and hamsters, we would like to put into a category of essentially domestic, right? They're exotic pets, but they're bred in captivity, commonly owned, and not something that needs to be restricted for health or safety reasons. So we'd like to clarify that. This is similar to what most provinces have actually already done. And so we're paralleling things along that. So those schedules will be something that's new in this. They're not intended, and I can't sort of reinforce this enough, they're not intended to be a limitation like on breed specific legislation. So we're not looking to apply things like no pit bulls Yukon wide or anything like that. That's not what it's in place for. The legislation is very clear in providing the duties of an owner to both care for and control the domestic animals that they own. And so the requirements for care are based off of, for the most part, standards of care that have already been well established. This was for livestock predominantly. There's a national organization that was responsible for saying, if you have poultry, this is the basic standard of care that you must provide for those animals. In the legislation itself, what it references is not that you must have food and water present for an animal, but that there must be adequate nutrition to support a good body condition score, right? The animal can't be emaciated. We've had situations occur where horses are emaciated, but there is straw present. Straw is technically feed. And so under the previous legislation, there was nothing we could do about that situation because there's food and water present. So this is more related to what's the actual outcome for the animal? Are they in good body condition or are they emaciated? And that's what becomes the foundation for the offense under the Act. So those duties of owners are around providing for appropriate care for the animals that they own. The other part that is new and replaces the Dog Act and to some extent the Pounds Act for livestock is the duty to control. And what this stipulates is that if your domestic animal, is not on your property, it must be under your control. And that doesn't mean a 6-foot leash. That can mean verbal control. It can mean control with horses because they're being attracted by the feed that's present for them. Outfitters will put feed down to keep them in the vicinity. They're under control if they're essentially under your control and you're responsible for them. And so if they're not, then that provides an opportunity for an offense under this legislation that would be subject to a ticket. So those duties of care and control are the two key sort of pillars of what people are responsible for. The other thing that's new with this is an expansion on the penalties that can be applied. And those have brought the maximums for fines up to what's consistent with what's happening across Canada. So they're stiffer than they once were. To counter that is the recognition that issuing a fine to someone who's often on the borderline of being able to even manage their own life is not usually very productive. And the approach to enforcement is always to start with education and to bring people into compliance. And so that's the intention, but also acknowledging that there will be people who are persistently non-compliant. And in those instances, what we've provided for is a very broad list of alternative penalties that sometimes are more effective in change and have less of a detrimental effect on the animals that are in the home than a fine, which will maybe limit a person's ability to care for their animals, or a prison sentence, which will take them away from caring for them. So things like community service, things like obedience to orders, that type of thing are now presented in the Act as alternatives that we put in front of a justice if we get to the stage of pursuing this. And oftentimes judges can do this, but unless you sort of prompt them that this is a possibility, they may not consider it. So the thing that may be of interest to local governments is the opportunity to enter into specific agreements with Yukon government for the administration or for the enhancement of this Act on a local basis. It is less relevant to communities that have the opportunity to set their own bylaws, but we do have some communities and some unincorporated areas that haven't got that authority. And so in this instance, they could, through agreement with us, have regulations passed that would support them in taking action in their own community. So that's just kind of a broad overview of what is contained in this. I think I'm happy to answer questions around the Act at this point. And the other thing is we are moving into a stage of more thorough engagement on some of the specifics. And so we'll be talking to folks about how that would best work for their interests to further engage.
Great. Well, thank you, Mary. That was very, I think, well encompassing of what's happening. I would just like to say I apologize because after I got the letter from Minister Clark, I did see that there was engagement in Watson Lake during Mayor Brown's time and Mayor O'Brien's time, and also Chief Morgan. So I guess COVID just got in the middle of it. So we were a little bit, as a new council, not caught off guard. So appreciate your overview of this. I'll just turn it to council to see if there's any questions. No? How about administration?
I think, Mary, you're presenting to the CAOs on the 23rd. Is that correct? Or somebody is?
Yes. Next Wednesday morning.
Yes, that's right. So I think most of my questions will come out there, but just for council, I'm wondering what the impact on us as a community where we do have bylaws, and if our bylaws differ from what's under the Act. So is that going to make the municipality have to stiffen our procedures up to match the territorial Act, or are we fine with our existing bylaws?
I think that there's no likelihood that what we have in the Act itself will be more than what bylaws have for the various different communities. Typically, they are stricter, and so this will set a baseline. But you will not, as a municipality, be responsible for enforcing it. The territory will be responsible for enforcement. And so in the same way as you may have, say, the opportunity to issue tickets for something else, parking tickets or something like that, the RCMP have authority over and above what the municipality has. And so the responsibility for enforcing this will rest with Yukon government. We do anticipate that we will have a request for additional staff. We currently have one individual responsible for the vast majority of this, as well as some support on the livestock side from a livestock control officer that's a part-time component of one person's role. So we're seeing an expansion of the territorial resource to support this. I think the other key component in this is, well, what it really gives us is a better opportunity to respond when communities don't have enough in the way of bylaws. So if you're comfortable with what you have, then that's great. The other thing I'm hoping for, I'm expecting, is that we'll have resources to enhance the training and provide training for new officers who are hired under this, but at the same time extend that training to others in local governments. And we did one training session up here for our animal protection officer, as well as the Humane Society staff, on handling dogs and alternative methods of dealing with dangerous, unpredictable, fearful dogs. And it was the first one. And then again, COVID hit before we could repeat that. But those training opportunities, the opportunity to provide for improved equipment through mass purchases, those are the things that we can kind of tap into. The other is the opportunity that we expect out of this to designate individuals in communities who would function in a caretaker role for us, separate from the officer kind of role, but the person who might be capable of entering into contracts with Yukon government to provide short-term care for animals that might be seized or surrendered or in custody in communities, and that they'd be people who are already equipped to handle a number of dogs for short term until they're either returned to owner or until they are they're rehomed. And I think we'll talk to the folks in the various First Nations about this as well, because you may have in Watson Lake the opportunity to enact bylaws, but often with communities there are problems with dogs that are at large in the vicinity of the community as well, and are maybe not as readily subject to your local bylaws. This legislation provides that blanket across the territory where there can be some enforcement on behalf of Yukon government outside of communities as well.
Okay, no, that's good. And yeah, probably the fines in the territorial act will be higher than our municipal act. So I just wanted to make sure that, if there is a higher fine, that it's not, that we're not bound by that our bylaw would trump the territorial and municipal boundaries. And
certainly the fines are often at the high fines. The ticketable offenses will be set under adjacent legislation, but the actual fines associated with a conviction under this going to court would be a very end stage of what we foresee happening. As I said before, we're really focused on bringing people into compliance and making them aware of their responsibility with respect to the animals that they own.
Okay. And yeah, the other point where you said wanting to make agreements with people in the community, so that'd be similar to the old legislation, the pound keeper, right? For somebody.
Sorry, I missed the last part.
Be similar to somebody like the old pound keeper in the old act, right? So
yeah, under the Pounds Act. Yeah.
Exactly, right? So like Pelly Farms, with when animals were seized, the horses and stuff would go there, right? So yeah. So I guess that throws a little twist into the municipal side, because there's only certain zoning and approvals for that type of facilities in the municipal boundary. So that's something that we'll have to work with you guys on as to the limitations on that, right?
Exactly, yeah.
And no, coming from my previous life as an RCMP officer in the communities, I thoroughly enjoyed reading some of the changes that have been made in here, because I've had to live the old act and it was an absolute nightmare. So no, my concern from the administration of the community was just the impact it would have on us under our bylaws and us being bound to enforce, if we were going to be bound to enforce the territorial act.
No, that is not foreseen. It is seen as an opportunity, but not an obligation, right? So that going forward, this provides opportunities for communities to engage and have additional enforcement powers if they so choose, but definitely not an obligation. The obligation is on the territorial government.
Okay, so then too, if we have issues that we can't address through our municipal bylaws, we can lean on the new territorial staff to assist us in enforcing those sections.
Absolutely. And we've actually been involved in a number of cases in the last year with support for Whitehorse and situations where they need a little more experience with an investigator to enforce or to lay charges under the existing Animal Protection Act. And so at the request of a local government, Yukon government will step in and assist. We will not move in unless requested. That's kind of always been our approach to these things is if you ask us, we'll come, but we're not about to step in and say, this is the way you must do it.
Okay. And our big thing now is the fact that Yarn is closed here in Watson, like they're not accepting more dogs. Cheryl's not accepting more dogs. And what's going on at Maybacker, you know, that was an avenue for us to get rid of the dogs that were surrendered. But now those avenues have really come to a stop on it for us. So that creates problems for the municipality about how to deal with these pets that are surrendered or deemed as a nuisance animal, right?
Yeah. Our voluntary surrender program is still in place. And so through contact with Jay, our animal protection officer, we will support the surrender of any animals through our program into either the Maybacher shelter or the Dawson shelter. We do fund both those shelters for, and in exchange for that, we expect that they will support our program. Often there are challenges simply with getting the animals in a number of them at one time, getting them transported, but they can be, that is an avenue for surrender. And Jay will actually come out to communities to pick up if there are, if it kind of makes it worth it. He'll always come if there's a dangerous dog, right? He will always respond, even if we've gone out to pick up one dangerous dog and bring it back, if it's a threat. But if there are surrendered dogs that just need rehoming, it's usually a challenge for us to do that unless there's 2 or 3 to make it worth our while.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the assistance that he has been to my bylaw officer. It's been very helpful for us. So no, that's my questions. If I have any more, I'll bring them forward on the 23rd. Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks, Mary. I just had one quick question. You mentioned officers and appointment. Are you looking to appoint people locally, or are you hoping to have people travel, or what does that look like for Watson Lake?
We haven't fleshed out the details yet. And as we build the regulations, what will go forward with that is what's called a management board submission, which is where we say, if you want us to do this, it's going to take this many more people and this many more dollars. And then we expect to get about half of that. So that will go forward at the same time as the regs. And we do anticipate, I can't see how we can deliver on this without additional staff. And so the coverage that those people would be able to provide would have to be territory wide. So it is likely that we will see additional manpower in Dawson to address the needs of the northern half of the territory. We see a lot of demand from Old Crow and from Mayo, Faro, Ross River, those areas that Jay just has challenges getting to. Whether or not we'll have additional support for a position to deal with the southern part of the territory, I don't know yet, but that is where we have the opportunity to enter into agreements where Yukon government would fund someone at a deputy animal protection and control officer level. They'd be appointed jointly by, maybe have a bylaw position within a community, but they could also be appointed by the territorial government with limited authority to undertake the basics of issuing tickets, issuing orders, which are the real tool for getting things done, right? Advising people that you have not met this requirement, you must do this and so by this date. So that kind of power can be vested in a municipal employee under a joint appointment with the territory. And I would expect a sharing of salary and benefit requirements, or a contract or something like that.
Cam's nodding his head in excitement.
I mean, we got to see how it all works out, but you know, we're treading new ground here. Like we're opening up great possibilities to effect some much needed change, and it has to come with resourcing people locally, because one person can't do it at a Whitehorse.
Of course. Well, and your worship, just to follow up on that, the extra teeth that this would bring to the table for us, because we have had issues with dogs where we can only enforce in the municipal boundary, and then they move the dog to somewhere else outside of our municipal boundaries, and we have no say. And then, you know, the dog floats back in again. So it's nice to see that there is some teeth and some leeway, that maybe there is potential. So
That's what I was going to bring up, is that we do have, like, regionally, we have issues outside, just outside the municipal boundaries, like Upper Liard and maybe even Lower Post, which is difficult one because it's in BC. It's just outside, but it becomes a bit of an issue as well. Sometimes asking for support is difficult in that location, but working together, that's great. And then you did mention also some funding that could be potential for the municipality for, you know, kenneling, or I guess pound money. So if there's something that we can use.
Building facilities is usually beyond the scope of what we can do, but you know, things like providing equipment, providing traps, live traps, right? As really kind of an effective tool that we've used in a number of communities around dogs that have been abandoned, and it usually doesn't take much to affect capture. And so.
Well, and you know, just off the top of my head, you know, we always had a line item for dog food, which was kind of weird because it was for the pound, you know, and it's a small one, but it's always there, and we do have to feed pound dogs and keep care of them. So I think that's about it, Mary, unless council's good, but we really appreciate it. And again, it's nice to get up to speed, and we look forward to some more conversation around this. And I'm sure Cam will have a lot more to feedback at the CA meetings, because I think that was a big part of our concern, was the administration or the enforcement of what this undertaking is. And we weren't clear as to who and what that was going to look like. And in the past, there has been some downloading to the municipalities, which causes, you know, costs, and we're always.
For sure. I can kind of relate, because we're in the same position with the federal government. They bring in a new program and then they offload all the costs and the administration to the territory or the province. So it's not the intention at all. I must say too, we actually really enjoyed the visit that we did have, the one major visit that we did have to Watson Lake. We do a dog days event where we bring down we give away collars and tags, and we present information. We give away a couple of dog houses, and we usually, for the communities, we bring straw. We did Watson Lake one day, and we did the yard the next day. Some of the coldest days of the winter, I think. We froze our dog tagger, but it was a lovely meeting that was hosted there that evening. So we look forward to being able to make another visit back.
Oh, that's great. Okay, well, thank you again, Mary. We really appreciate it. And yeah, thanks for your work.
Thanks so much for having us, and we'll look forward to following up further.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank
Okay,
you.
I'll sign off now.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye now. Good night. Okay. All in all, not a bad thing. I think it'll help us in enforcement. So next on the agenda is CAO Lockwood.
thank you, your worship. So I guess one of the top things on my list, and it's already transpired tonight, is the introduction of the new interim fire chief, Colin O'Hara. I'm more than ecstatic to have that position filled after almost 2.5 years being vacant. So I think that's gonna take a lot of pressure off my shoulders and off my desk, which is really nice to see. Comes with a wealth of experience and community involvement. So that's a huge check mark. The other thing that we've got coming up, and I have sent message out to council, but the town community Christmas dinner, December 14th. So please put it in your calendars. We'll be looking for towards council helping serve and help process meat and get things dished up as you have in the past. It'd be nice to actually have the big Christmas dinner after the hiatus. So that's coming up on the 14th.
What time is that at, Cam?
5 or 6.
5 or 6. I'm not sure off the top of my head.
Like what time? Okay.
Put it in as 5.
Yeah. So wear your Christmas best.
Sort of meat in.
Yes.
Okay.
The other thing,
Serve meat.
I'm very I'm very proud to announce that we have been confirmed to receive Canmore funding for the Northern Lights Center. We have received $742,000 for the replacement of the Northern Lights Center dome projection system and sound system. And as part of that money is also the upgrades to the basement stairs, which are well needed, and the changing of the carpet in the theater.
Wow.
And I believe and we'll see how the rest of it flows out, but the US dollar fluctuates quite a bit. And we noticed the difference in between yesterday and today of $2,000 on that price volume. So we're being cautious on what we fully commit, but the work has to be done by March 31st. And we have a commitment from Spitz that it will be done. The only thing that can't get done because of supply chain issues is the lighting upgrades in there. But we do have confirmation from Dev territorially for $150,000 worth of funding for next year. So this stuff that we can't address by March 31st, we're going to be looking at rolling it over to next year, and that will really put us, as the guy said, one of the most state-of-the-art facilities.
Sorry, could you just repeat why we can't get the lights done again?
They get supply chain issues, they can't supply them.
Because those come from,
Well, it's a
Where?
lighting backlog everywhere. It's the same, no different than the rec center lighting. It was ordered back in April or May, and some of it is coming in today and some is still on back order.
okay,
So it's an international issue. So they know that, having talked to all the suppliers, they can't supply the lighting upgrades by March 31st. And the Canmore money has a drop dead date of March 31st. It has to be installed and operational.
cool.
So that's rolling ahead. The other thing that's occurring yesterday and today is the connection of the new above ground fuel tank at the Northern Lights Center and servicing of the boilers there. And they're going to be around servicing the rest of our oil fired furnaces in all our buildings to have everything ready for winter. I sort of alluded to the rec center lighting. We're getting very close on having all the lighting done. It's just some of that stuff is still back ordered, and it's been very frustrating for the contractor and us to have that done. I've actually had to apply for an extension to our funding through Energy Solutions under that program, which has been approved. The other thing that's progressing very well is the renovations to the change rooms. So that's flowing ahead, and it's still slated to be done before Christmas break. So hopefully they ran into a little issue with flooring. We substituted a color as of this morning, and the color is in stock. So it's minor things, but it's getting done. The other thing on the list is the public waste drop-off area is out for tender. There was a request from some contractors for an extension due to them having trouble getting pricing. And so it closes now on November 25th. Myself and the operations manager have a meeting with Colliers on November 29th. And hopefully we'll be coming to council on December 6th with a recommendation to get that done for start in the spring.
Cool.
So, which is huge. So yeah, so with having the interim fire chief on staff now, I'm happy to say that positions are all full on that side, on the house there, so, which is very nice, so. And yeah, and then council, of course, is invited to the staff Christmas party on December 10th.
Great.
That's coming up, so don't get a formal email go to you yet, so just put it in your calendars for the 10th, please.
That sounds great.
And the rest I will leave for council open forum, your worship.
Sounds good. Thomas, do you have a quick question?
Yeah, CEO Lockwood, can you expand on how we got the 700,000 plus from Canor? Because like, if the timeline, if you like, we applied to CDF for like 500 and something once upon a time, they said, we'll only give you this much. And like, so like, how can you expand on the narrative of how that
Sure.
took place? Like, who did that?
Well, it was the most opportune thing. We applied for that 500,000 or whatever the dollar amount was through CDF. And it was declined. And then they came back and approved us for $100,000 to do a feasibility study on the Northern Lights Center that we didn't ask to have done. And so that's still going ahead. And then ECDev introduced us to Canor. And that's a chain of funding we've never been able to figure out because everybody's in their own little silos and they don't talk about these things.
Yeah.
And so we had a meeting with Canor and ECDev. And ECDev said that they had $150,000 to go to the project. And Canor was almost like an open piggy bank. They wanted us to put in a proposal of all our wish lists that we could possibly get done on that building by March 31st. So we sent, Tiffany prepared a submission to them, funding submission. And yeah, I got a phone call from MP Brendan Handley last Wednesday night, about 5:30 or so, saying that we've been signed off and approved by Ottawa on that funding. So being there's that amount of money available, we met with, and that's when I was away, it was Tiffany and Shannon met with ECDev and Canor, and ECDev said that they would carry their money over to next year to pick up anything that was missing from the project. So it's huge. And it was a door that was open that we didn't even know we had access to. And so ECDev came down and met with Tiffany and myself, and they toured the Northern Lights Center. And while they're here, there was two of them, and we're dealing with the one over this project, but their co-worker came down and his stuff is energy, green energy. And so I got talking with him, well, it might have opened another piggy bank for us for district heat upgrades.
Well,
So it's all about
right place, right time,
right place, right time, and getting this in FaceTime with somebody, and they've got the.
and having the right person write the proposal right there, Mrs. Lund.
So it was huge. The connection was, it's unbelievable, and it flowed through, and it's huge for our community, because where do you hear that's a $742,000 investment in a tourism space facility? It's gonna be phenomenal.
So that's the entire cost of the project. We don't have to transfer any from reserves, right?
Nothing. They credited us for us buying the fuel tank and doing up
Wow.
the maintenance. So they put that as our contribution.
Okay,
So it's money we were already spending. We didn't have to come up with 90% or 10% of the proposal, or 25. It was, and they actually even credited us for doing the roof on the building last year as part of our contribution.
Nice.
Oh,
That's super, that's excellent. It's amazing that we went from no to, well, we'll give you a study that we don't really want or need to whatever, you know? It's
whatever you need.
And the-
exciting.
And that study is still moving ahead. Elevator Yukon was down and met with user groups. And they had an assessment done on the building as well. And we have architectural design firm coming down to actually look at the layout of the inside of the Northern Light Center to see if we can improve flow and setup inside. So yeah, there's a whole much more coming, and part of that will be recommendation on maybe upgrading all our lighting to LED and doing those types of things. So
I guess with lots of that comes to marketing and advertising. If we're gonna have a state of the art system with the state of art
Yeah.
projector, that we should put money into marketing and advertising, which will only increase people coming here.
hugely, and yeah, and like the new state of the art dome theater in the north it's unheard of in most of Canada.
Yeah.
Because you know, only going to big centers like Vancouver and Winnipeg and them having domes, right? So
So we're gonna capitalize.
we're
on it.
gonna definitely flog it.
Good.
Right.
Good. Okay, we'll keep moving along if Thomas.
I'm satisfied.
Okay. Good. Next on the agenda, we have the RCMP policing report. Nobody here to report, but if there's any questions, we can definitely get some feedback to them.
I don't have anything specific. I just was noticing that the total number of files or complaints is like down considerably, but I mean, I doubt it's because there's less crime.
Short
I
staff,
think it's probably just short staffed for a lot of the year and
Yeah.
whatever.
that was my only comment too.
Yeah.
It's like half, cut in half,
Mhm.
so.
But in their briefing notes, they also mentioned that the more charges are being laid. So with that, the workload is comparable. So I don't know if you guys got that part.
Yeah, I did see that.
Well, what we can do is we'll have, because there is new members and we'll have them come and do another read of their report. So we can ask them some questions regarding it, and see where they're at with staffing. Or maybe just get them a little more regularly, just so they can give us a quick download of what's going on.
Or ask them where their policing direction is
Yeah.
heading, like what's their goal for next year to.
Which we should be a part of, and
Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, we already, I think that was already set, was it not?
Well, it is for this year, but they're
Yeah.
gonna be starting on in February, they'll be starting on the new priorities. And when you look at the numbers, just from being there, I look at some of the stuff that, like, they have cause disturbance, mischief. They have it at year-to-date files of 242 compared to last year, 386 for the whole year. It's new members transferring in from different parts of the country who were trained how to code things different than others. So those numbers, and when you look at the numbers, like October last year was 94 files, October this year was 94 files, October the year before was 116. So yeah, their file number is going to be low, right? When you look at the total file number, last year their total file count was 2,069 files. And this year to the end of October, there are 1,049. So they're gonna come in probably around the 1,500 mark. Hopefully things don't go astray, but that's probably where they'll come in. But you never know, things are so fluid in that world. But the numbers aren't really that far at all.
thank you.
You're saying you're gonna have them in and talk about this one or just for future?
I think future.
Yeah, okay.
More regularly, and
I was gonna say, I don't
definitely be a
know.
part of their directive for the next year.
Maybe
And be adamant that we weren't a major part of this year, so we want to have some say in what's going on in the future.
And I must say, your worship, lately I've seen more police cars out and doing check stops and sitting out in places that I haven't seen in almost a year, for sure.
Well, I'll add to that comment and tell you that I have two people that live on my street, and I've seen a cop car go by 3 times last week, so
Yeah.
it's a dead end street.
No,
I'm
they're out
starting
and
to
about.
get concerned.
I'm just waiting for you. A little bit, yeah.
Okay, so anyways, moving on. Number 7 is the third reading of the zoning bylaw. It's not third and final because of the way I said that we would make things happen. So this is the third reading, not the final. So we will have one more committee of the whole meeting for any feedback. Make sure that everybody's okay with the final copy of the zoning bylaw. So with that being said, can I have a motion for the third reading of the zoning bylaw 2021-11?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Thank you, Councillor Hanchar and Councillor Slager. Any more questions or comments?
Did you get your points in?
And
Your worship, I can tell you that based on the feedback from that was missed, so the floodplain base, which it was always airport, the zoning, which is wrong in the mapping, has been corrected on the new map. And also the other part that was the thing that was missed that we noticed was the future development areas the council had worked through on and the OCP. So those for future residential and industrial is missed, and that has been asked to be added to the map as well.
Okay,
For the zoning. Okay. Okay, all in favor? Carry. So this is the first reading of fees and charges by law amendment 2022-08, so that we can present it to public. Can I have a motion?
I'll make a motion for first reading of the fees and charges by law amendment.
I can second it.
Thank you, Councillor Hanchar and Councillor Paquette. Any questions, comments?
I have a comment about the bowling. I know last time we talked about putting a DV rate on there, and I'm wondering if there has ever been thought about putting a nonprofit rate on there, just because there is a nonprofit rate for all the other facilities or whatever, like the community hall and the arena, like whatever. There's a line for nonprofit. I was just wondering if that is something that you guys think is reasonable or not.
So, your worship, all everything for those type of discussions will come at the committee of the whole meeting.
Oh, sorry.
Being this is a decision meeting, so those will, but anyways, I will.
I can ask you again next time.
I will make note of it for next.
Sorry, thanks.
I just have one comment. I just couldn't find rental for equipment at the rec center, like the bikes. The kick sleds, like there's no
Oh, you're right.
line in there. for
Yeah,
that.
and it's sort of deceiving because they're charged under the drop-in rate, I believe.
Yeah,
But we can definitely note that for clarity.
yeah, okay, thank you. Just couldn't find it, so I wasn't sure if I was missing it.
No, that was a good point. Thank you very much.
Okay, so I had a motion. All in favor?
Yes, sorry.
Carried. Like we'll have lots of discussion for this, but is now available for the public.
Mhm.
So make sure everybody gets a copy of it. It's a good look at it. Next on the agenda is first and second reading of capital budget bylaw amendment 2022-09.
I'll make a motion to do the first and second reading of the capital budget bylaw amendment for 2022-09.
Thank you, Councillor Burtis.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor Hanchar. All in favor? Questions, comments, sorry. All in favor? Okay.
Okay, this is fast.
Yeah.
You want to get out of here.
Then I can't say a dog costing 15 grand, but whatever.
Okay. That can be brought up at the committee of the whole meeting.
Absolutely.
Have the discussion.
Actually, that was already approved in your original capital budget.
I know, but why don't we use like the
Committee of the
blue?
whole.
Or we can just tell them,
Add a question to your council open forum.
I can do that.
Okay, thank you, sir. Appreciate that, Councillor Slager. All right, last item of the agenda is the CAMA conference. So Cam is interested in attending the CAMA conference. He needs a motion from council for.
Yes, so as I put forward, your worship, or was the fact that I've been sponsored for a scholarship for my registration, my fees, which was to be supposed to have been 3 years ago before all the COVID world changed. So Expenses would be my travel and accommodations.
What is the, what
That
is,
is, CAMA is the Canadian Association of Municipal Administrators. And that's their annual conference where they do different training and workshops for different for all the CAOs across Canada. And it's a network thing. It's actually covered under my training and stuff in my contract, but I found it was an excellent forum for making connections and actually learning stuff in the seminars that I don't have an option to take while I'm here. So
where is it hosting?
this one is the Deerhurst Resort in Ontario.
Nice.
Councillor Hunter.
Maybe this should be separate, but I also don't want to talk about FCM as well. Separately?
It would be your.
Okay, sure. I'll make a motion to approve Cam's attendance to CAMA in May
Thank you, Councillor Hunter.
I'll second.
and all fees
Thank you,
associated.
Councillor Burtis. All in favor?
Thank you.
Carried. Happy holidays. Just kidding. So with that, Councillor Open Forum.
May I go first, just so I can tag on to what we just talked about?
Councillor.
Around the same time as CAMA, there's also the FCM conference, which is the annual conference and trade show. This year it's in Toronto, and I think that we should also send CAM to that. I think that we should also send 1 or 2 counselors. I personally would like to attend, but if somebody else would rather go, I'm open to, obviously, that conversation.
Sorry, what's
but-
that one?
So.
Canadian municipality.
Yeah, it's like workshops, panels, networking. It's like the biggest gathering of all municipal leaders, basically, and it happens every year. This year it was in Regina, and a bunch of people from the city of Whitehorse went, I think from a couple of the other municipalities as well. We haven't sent anybody at least since pre-2018. So I think that I don't know, do you want to add?
Yes, your worship, I can maybe fill some gaps there. Council has sent councillors or the mayor in other years prior to my employment. There is bang for it is a worthwhile event to go for. The members going have to really be cautious on what meetings or seminars they sign up for, because when they start talking some stuff, we have to look at the rural stuff, because they talk about small communities. Well, small communities they're talking about are 50,000 and under. So some of the stuff is really geared different.
Ultra rural.
Yeah, so there's yes, and other communities actually set it up that during a term of council, so the 3 years, municipalities allow for 1 or 2 councillors to go each year to CAMA or to FCM to attend it.
And when's that, sorry?
It is the weekend.
May 25th to 28th this year.
And it's in Toronto.
Toronto.
Yeah. And so I believe you would combine.
It would be
The same trip.
I have to fly into Toronto to go to CAMA.
But they're right, like
Yeah, they're 2 days apart.
yeah, okay.
Usually CAMA's first and FCM follows. This year, for some reason, FCM, I guess it's due to bookings or availability. So FCM is prior to CAMA.
Are you expressing interest in it?
I am expressing interest. But I think that, yeah, Cam and 1 or 2 counselors should go.
I would support you in that endeavor.
Potentially, I mean, if it's available.
Not the ideal time for me, but never know.
I mean, do we have to decide who? We just need a motion to approve that. I just didn't know if you needed to know those types of things now going into budget time.
Well, it would be something we would there is travel already like associated with council, like we do account for that. There would have to be a decision made at the, discussion at the committee of the whole meeting to discuss if council would send 1 or 2 a year.
Right.
Ongoing.
Yeah. Right. Other communities actually have a policy that states.
Just you have to read some.
Well, you don't have.
Set some directives.
This is a maximum we will send, and during your term, you're not allowed to go every year or go twice, you're allowed to go once.
Set some directive.
Yeah.
Okay, so can we add that to the agenda for the committee of the whole?
Absolutely.
Okay, and we'll just try and hash out some details there.
What were your dates again? And third?
May 20 something.
Yeah.
Just Google it on top. Right.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hanchar.
Worship, make process signing off.
Good night, Mike Browse.
Good night, Mike.
Councillor Slager, any-
Have me.
I don't know. Yeah, two things. I did read the read receipt that it said to send to Janice and Randy. I did read it. I never sent you a read receipt. I apologize for that. And because I know she's in the gallery maybe still, yes. And the other thing, the blue barrels that we have for the water treatment plants that we used to make docks out of before, can we still use those, or do we have to get like some sort of environmentally approved super duper plastic and
Yes.
non-splintering wood engineered to the microfiber, blah, blah, blah?
Due to liability, Counselor Slager, yes, we can't use barrels and strapping and that type of stuff. We're really regulated. We've actually, under that, if you looked in the coding, we've applied to CDF for funding for that dock. And that would be the polyurethane dock that's actually made large floating dock with the approved letters and all the 9 yards to get away from liability to the municipality.
Gotcha.
Hence the reason that amount, yeah, when I first seen it, but that's the quotes right across the board for that type of stuff.
No, I just thought it might be a way for us to use up those blue barrels rather than like trying to recycle them and.
Yeah.
Like that, anyway, that
The
was,
blue barrels do have, they do have a core charge on them, and we're gonna be probably putting them on our auction stuff and lots of tin or something to try and recoup some of that money, because it's $55 core charge in each one of those barrels.
good.
I would speak from a little bit of dock experience that price doesn't seem too outrageous once you get the floats and the lumber and
Well, that's what I was just
labor
thinking. I
and
was like, well,
it's not
because I know.
at all outrageous.
Seems are $2,000.
Yeah.
That, just that.
Okay.
And it's something that we have to do this year, because otherwise we're gonna have to take that dock out.
Yeah.
And there won't be a dock. So,
No, that's it.
Anything else? Good. Councillor Paquette?
Okay, too.
I had one item that I just wanted to bring up with council, and that was Chief Schilling, Deputy Chief Schilling came to me for a couple of things. Mostly because during their rental of the rec center during what was it? Oh, why did they have the big sitting? The GA, thank you very much. They had there's no artwork, no mural, nothing on the walls within the main hall. And he approached me about a joint endeavor to have a mural done. And he is very I think this would be a great opportunity to have a small combined project together and have something done within the rec center mural wise. Chief Schilling presented an idea, just an idea, and a price of $10,000 to have Mary Caesar create and design and put up a mural within the rec center. I just, that was, I tell them that it sounds like a great idea, but it doesn't ultimately rest in my hands. So
Is that each or is that to split?
split.
Okay.
I'm not opposed to it. I think that, something, it would liven up the room. Obviously there'd have to be a design choice. It would just be like, there's a wall,
Freestyle.
fly at her. So you'd have to be something that would be like central to the community. That would be something that you could look at and be like, yes, I'm very proud of that.
Right. I would, okay, well, if council is not opposed to it or would entertain the idea, then I can work with administration, come up with a couple ideas of what that might look like. We can bring it to the
Even a
committee.
couple other artists too.
So I guess.
Bring it to the committee of the whole
Different artist.
for discussion. present it on an agenda. And then we can discuss what those funds would be and where they'd come from and et cetera, and what that mural would look like. Right? Because
You just reminded me what I wanted to ask about. The rec
Can I-
center also.
can I just finish up
Sorry.
with this?
I thought you were finished, but I thought.
So if everybody's okay with that, I just want to make sure that.
Yes, let's
bring
talk about it at a future meeting.
the Community of the whole, and I'll put it on the agenda.
Yeah.
And we can discuss it, and hopefully come up with some concepts and work together with the Udena Council to put something up in there. Okay. Sorry, Diana, go ahead.
No. Yeah, the rec center, when I've been looking at it, I've been looking at it for a while, but there's a lot of fabric on there and it's really dusty and really dirty. Is there any way that anybody can go up there and vacuum that off? And it just actually is beginning to look really disgusting and dirty in there.
I looked at it, then, I actually looked at it a couple weeks ago, when I was there for a funeral. And I believe it's to the state of its life that it needs to be replaced. It's beyond vacuum. It's actually to the point it's stained.
Oh,
So,
okay.
It's something that we're looking at under the scope of either renovations or replacement or that type of thing. But we're also looking at different funding avenues to see about getting that work done. So that's things that I'm actively pursuing right now. Because now that the front part of the roof is done, we're looking at other roof repairs. I've got quotes coming to go in the capital budget for future more roof repairs to try and extend. Make things, especially now that the lighting projects is done, changers are going to be done. So now if we can start repairing other issues that are causing this concern at the moment. And that's one of them.
It's a good sound barrier for
Yeah.
sure. Like, I mean, if we didn't have something there, the room would be
Yeah.
great. You'd be able to hear the person. And
Importantly, when it comes to prioritizing, if it's dirty or the chip rocks falling off the wall, I have to
Yeah.
play that juggling.
no, understandable.
Anything else for council open forum? Okay, we have no in-camera business, so
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
thank you, Councillor Hanchard. Thank you, Councillor Burtis. All in favor? Carried. Thank you, everybody, for attending.